went to the Atlantic Center DMV in Brooklyn and looked on the web and downloaded all the forms to get a new driver's license and read that I needed 6 points of identification, and then I waited through a 30-minute line and was told that 4 of my 6 points absolutely have to be my my Social Security card, which I lost probably 10 or 15 years ago. And so, you know, if they just said that in big bold letters on the website, but you know, the problem is, this is what it's got me thinking. There's absolutely no repercussion for government offices and bureaus and whatnot to have friction in their system. You know, it doesn't set them back at all. Whereas in the public sector, in the private sector, and in the entrepreneurial sector, the business sector, you know, you lose customers if you have friction in your system. So there should be some sort of penalty for having friction in their system somehow. That would just cause the whole thing to get so efficient so quickly. I'm all actually 100% about disruption these days increasingly. I mean, I just read, you probably, I mean, in your research, I think everybody knows about these guys except me, but yep. So I mean, this guy, Clayton Christensen, really like applies science to disruption. A lot of people just throw that term around, but now, you know, really understanding what disruption means from a theoretical level and why it's good, or you know, why it can move ideas forward, is really, I think, powerful. A big aha moment I had was in 2006. I had started a startup called Outside.in with my co-founders Stephen Johnson and Corey Forsyth, and it was a funded company. It was going pretty strong. We were working in Dumbo in Brooklyn, and I'd work on it all day long on my computer, looking at the web, and then I'd close my computer down at the end of the day, and I would walk home through Brooklyn to my house, which was about a mile away. And I was just struck every day with the discrepancy between how well the web was working and how poorly the city was working. In other words, how little friction there was on the web. Everything that needed to happen was happening. Everything was where you wanted it to be. Everything was happening the way you wanted it to happen. And then you close down your computer, and it seemed like the reverse was true of the city. And I thought, couldn't we just take a little bit of that ingenuity, that disruptive spirit of the web, and apply it to cities? You know, not be thinking all the time about how can I build the next Twitter or how can I build the next Facebook, but how can I take some of the friction out of this city? And so that built and built and built until I started this site, DIYcity, the do-it-yourself city, of how can we take some of the inspiration from the web and apply it towards cities. I wouldn't take so much credit as to say that any project I did caused the disruptive change. I feel like it's all part of a much larger discussion that's always going on. But that project, DIYcity, when I launched it in, did I say 2006? I'm sorry, 2008. It was right as Obama and Bush were fighting for the presidency and was going to be president. And I launched that. And at the time, my lead-off sentence on that site was, you know, governments do not get technology, and they're so resistant to change. And we, the people, have to just be the change. We have to take the reins in our own hand, because governments there's so much change you can make happen in cities with a little bit of technology. Governments don't get this. They're just putting up barrier after barrier. Well, here we are 2.5 years later, and that situation has changed entirely. Governments, at least in the US, and in a lot of cities, I think like London and Paris and certain cities, city governments really are getting it. And so that change has happened so quickly that it kind of put that site out of business in a way. It was like, wow, really it's about working with the governments now, because this disruptive thought came in. I was part of it, certainly. That site inspired a lot of people to start making that kind of change. And now, you know, if you're working in San Francisco to make cities work better, you absolutely work with the people in the government. You work with Jay Nath, who's the Director of Innovation for the city. I mean, there's a Director of Innovation for cities. That's great. That wasn't the case. So that was a real disruption that I think I was a part of, and I'm really happy to have been a part of that. In 2009, somebody came to me who worked in government and didn't want their name associated with this, because government, you know, nobody wants to be taking chances and have failure attached to their name. But they really wanted something that was equivalent of what they were calling an open 311 system. You know, there's 311 in New York, and you can call in and basically get connected to anybody in the city and get any kind of answer you want. And they're saying if we just opened this up and made it a data point of access between government and people, we could accomplish so much. And Bloomberg needs to hear this message. He doesn't get it at all. Here's what we should do. So he and I worked on this together, and we put out this large call to action on the site DIYcity. Mayor Bloomberg, we want an open 311 for New York City. We want you to meet with us. These people, here are our points. This is why it was the work that. And that was pretty much the first anybody had ever talked about Open 311 at that point. Now Open 311 has become this huge movement, multi-city movement, with San Francisco, New York City, several other cities involved, trying to agree on a protocol for an Open 311. There's also startups like SeeClickFix that are doing it. Now SeeClickFix have been around before we put out this call to action. So, like I say, there's always a lot of people drilling down on any sort of change at the same time. But this one post that we put on the site, that again, I'm not taking full credit for, I was sort of the messenger. A lot of people came and looked at that. I sat and looked at our Google Analytics and how many cities every day, city government offices were coming and looking at that document. And just being able to see the wheels turning in government employees' heads about, we do need something like this to really make the city work better. So I think the key to disruption and quick innovation is to have very tight feedback loops and very quick iterative cycles. So failure is a big part of that. Any kind of feedback loop and iteration involves failure and analyzing a failure. You have a model here and you see what the friction is, and so you come up with a theory for what's going to be a more frictionless system. You try that out and you compare results, and if results are better, then you make that your new model and you try and posit what's good, create even less friction. But along the way, you're also going to encounter failures. You're going to come up with theories that aren't going to work, and they're going to be worse than the original. And when that happens, I think you just have to accept that's a failure, what you call, and move back to your original hypothesis as fast as you can. So I think failure is definitely part of the cycle, and it has to kind of come to see it as an inevitable and healthy part of the cycle. Even though there's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic and there are a lot of doom and gloomers out there, I personally am pretty optimistic about the future, because I think that the feedback loops that I see happening in the world are so fast now, and the iterative cycles are so fast that I see improvements to systems happening faster and faster. I think there's an acceleration to innovation and improvement going on that's not linear. It's actually maybe exponential. So I'm pretty optimistic that problems are starting to get solved maybe faster than they're being created. I don't know. That's a pretty optimistic thing to say, but and my jury is still out a bit on that, but that's the theory that I'm working with right now.
Okay.
It's all about how fast can you iterate, how fast can you get feedback cycles, and how fast can you throw out a new test model to see if it works or not, to see that just going faster and faster. Disruptive thinking and new thinking is absolutely essential in every field right now, because, as I say, there are a lot of problems going on in the world, and those problems are stacking up and accumulating. So I think that innovation and new thinking is sort of the thing that keeps all of those problems at bay. So I think innovation isn't just a gee whiz thing. It's really a mandatory action for survival. And so I'm getting really interested in just the idea of innovation and what can drive innovation to go faster, and how can we remove friction from innovation and innovation systems. And I'm looking for ways to not just remove innovation from workplaces, or remove friction from workplaces, or remove friction from cities, but remove friction from the innovative process. So how can we make how can we tighten the feedback loops? How can we take good ideas and get them in place faster? How can we make failure happen faster? Those are all things that I think are being worked on right now and need to be worked on right now by, like, from a macro level, by everybody.